And I'm going to start by saying, welcome to everybody to season three. This is how long we've been doing it, to the ICMS mentoring networking session. I will say all my favorite TV shows started to suck after season three, so hopefully that will continue. Um, but I'm really grateful to have all of you here, to have our speakers. So just kind of as this is the first session. Once a month, we're going to meet at this time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We will record these for those of you that can't attend. And we're going to talk to experts in the field of motorsports about everything from, first responders to trackside support, motorsport medicine, physiology, nutrition, training, engineering. I think I'm quite happy with our lineup for this year. We did take a lot of the feedback from all of you of wanting a little bit of F1, wanting some more sports car stuff, wanting some IndyCar stuff. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting. I sent a, excuse me, an email out that kind of lists everybody and like a sort of rough topic. I'm not going to give all the secrets away just yet as we get closer. We still have a couple open dates that we're going to fill those with shortly. So we're excited for that. Um, if you are not on the email list or you would have someone you would like to add to the email list, please let me know. I appreciate that. Um, the other announcement I kind of would like to make, I guess it's also could be meet, is I certainly don't do any of this alone. So I'm a part of the ICMS Education Committee, which is myself, Dr. Mike Reed from the University of Florida, and Tom Gideon, who sadly can't join us today, but is, kind of retired engineer from NASCAR. And then, of course, the ultimate help we have is Tom Weisenbach, our executive director of ICMS. Now, according to Tom's rules and director of ICMS, and kind of as he tells me what to do, I'm told that I'm becoming chair of ICMS in December or January. I believe that's correct, right, Tom?
January
Um,
1, you take over, brother.
yeah, yeah. So, I have a full belief that, you should only have one role at one organization. So when that happens, I'm going to step back from this, and I'm hoping Mike, Tom, and Tom can kind of carry this on. They will do far better than me. It'll be fantastic, but just letting you know that's kind of where that's coming from. So with that, I thought I would let my committee members, so Mike introduce himself, and then we'll turn it over to Tom.
Yeah, hi folks. Mike Reed. I'm a professor at the University of Florida, physiologist by training. Very interested in driver physiology. I've had the privilege of collaborating with David on some experiments in the past, and have found that really interesting. And a big fan of ICMS. I think ICMS is a wonderful portal into the world of motorsports for folks from a variety of backgrounds. And I'm really enthusiastic about this education committee's work, bringing in new folks, providing opportunities for trainees. And I've really appreciated David's leadership in that. So thanks.
Tom, would you like to kind of tell our group a little bit about ICMS, what they can look forward to, and then we'll turn over to our guest who we're excited to hear from today.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Dr. Ferguson. Big hello to Aiden and Ur, two of our student members have been with us for several years. Great to have you guys back with us today. ICMS, guys, is an international not-for-profit. If you're not familiar with us, we currently have members in 21 countries who work motorsports events in over 40 countries. Um, Several at our annual Congress last December, we had the chief medical officer of 7 Formula One races there, as well as IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, Indy Toronto, and about 12 other racetracks. So we've got a lot of great medical personnel from all over the world that are engaged with our membership. Our membership's made up of really a couple different areas, and I would start with medical. That's going to be our doctors and our nurses. And then I see our first responders, and PK, Paul, our guest speaker today, really falls under this because he's heavily involved at the racetracks across Canada, and he'll share more of what he does. But Paul works very closely with our firefighters, our paramedics, EMTs, et cetera, at the track. So we have those folks as members as well. We have an engineering membership base, which is getting, I think, stronger. We have quite a few engineers from NASCAR, some of the PPE companies, IndyCar, et cetera. I think we have our academia specialists, and I'll say with what Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Reed, We have some other universities involved with us, and especially on the student side, it's great to have the different areas of academic involved with us. Last night, I was fortunate enough to speak to the Purdue University Motorsports Engineering program, one of only 3 programs for specific motorsports engineering in the country. And it was the first one actually launched. I think we'll have, I'd say probably maybe 10 of those students are going to be joining the ICMS now. Mike, they want to do the poster presentation. I gave them an overview of what we did last December, and they loved it. David, it was really neat last night with this engineering group. There was 34 students in the class, I believe. And I said, who's got experience in motorsports? Raise your hand, keep them up. Who's been doing sports car? And I think 19 of them have been doing work with sports car teams already, which is incredible. So that was really neat. I think that was kind of the most popular or passionate area was sports car, which was really cool. And so I shared that you're going to be down at IMSA this weekend, and again, it's great. And in our membership also, we have some great corporate partners, Impact and K1. A lot of the different PPE companies are involved, and our whole mission is continue to educate and share knowledge and best practices. And I would encourage you, if you're a member, to become a member. As Ur and Aiden would share with you, it's all about networking. I'm trying to help you as a student build your network in our industry. So as you want to get engaged in our industry, it's not just Dr. Ferguson or Dr. Reed or Chris trying to help you. It's the whole ICMS. And I would say that's probably our biggest asset right now is our connectivity that we have amongst our membership. So again, thanks for joining us today. I think you'll enjoy what Paul has to share. He's got some phenomenal experience.
Thank you, Tom. I always appreciate it. And I encourage, all the trainees and students here to kind of pursue becoming a member and looking at that. And with that, I'm going to say welcome to Paul Kennedy. As Tom said, vastly experienced in first responder, trackside support. Paul, I'm going to let the floor be yours, sir. Please take some time, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and I think everyone's really excited to learn from you. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions.
Thanks a lot, guys. First, I will say I am from Canada, but please don't hold that against me. Um, I'm co-owner of Canadian Motorsports Response Team, and we do all the major races in Canada as far as road courses and drag racing is concerned. We also do some oval track stuff out of our Ontario division. Personally, I've been involved in motorsports since about 1989 when I started on pit lane fire for Levitt Safety out in Vancouver when the IndyCar race used to be there. And then I moved to more the on-track part when Edmonton got the Indy race back in, I don't know, 08, 09, something like that. And been doing the on-track stuff ever since. A little bit about myself. I am a paramedic. I have been involved in emergency medical services for 46 years, I think. So yes, I'm that old. And I'm also a firefighter. So got a pretty good knowledge of what happens on emergency scenes. My current role with CMRT, I do the Formula One race in Montreal every year, where I actually now drive the medical chase car for the support races with a couple of doctors in with me, and I try not to scare them too bad. And then I do GP3R, which is also in Montreal, which is more like a NASCAR style weekend. It's we run combi trucks as opposed to the events when we do F1, where we're in medical cars. So I'll talk a little bit about the differences in the different types of events that we do as well. And then out west here, I do about 70 days on track every year as a volunteer. And I really do everything from the nationals for NHRA when they come to Edmonton, lots of road course stuff, lots of corporate stuff. And I really encourage people who want to get into this industry is it's not about getting to go to the big race. You learn by going to the small races. You learn by doing your local track stuff. When I do ice racing, for example, in the wintertime, we'll do 20 or more responses a day. And if you go to an F1 race, you're lucky if you roll once. So as far as getting comfortable and working on a track and what you got to understand about working on a track, you don't get that from working a couple of big events a year. You really get good at this whole thing by working those small events and your local tracks. And anybody who's interested in getting into this, really take a look at what you have around you and see what you can do to help those guys out. A lot of these small tracks throughout the States, they're pretty limited in what they have. They have some first aiders there. They might have an ambulance there. They might or might not have a proper rescue truck. So you could really learn a lot, and you could actually help them improve their systems too. So keep that in mind because that's really what ICMS is all about: is trying to get safety and knowledge to the grassroots levels of racing. We're all really good when we go to an F1 race. Unfortunately, most of the major collisions that happen where people are injured, it's not at an F1 race. It's at a local dirt track somewhere on a weekend. And their response is not always the best because they just don't have the personnel, the training, or the people or the equipment to do it. Um, so that's a little bit about me. And I'm going to ramble a bit, but if anybody has a question, please just hop on and ask me because I get kind of sidetracked sometimes. Like I said, I'm old. Um, what I want to do is kind of go through what we do on the track and what we do to get ready for working on the track. And I think I'm going to start off first by talking how we make our teams. And our teams are made up in different ways based on the type of event we're doing. So if we're doing an F1 race, we're all in cars of some type, depending on the event. Last year, we're all in Audis up in Montreal. And we have extraction teams, medical teams, and then the medical chase car with a couple of doctors in it. Those teams are organized with 5 or 6 people. They have a crew chief, 1 or 2 jump medics, an anesthesiast, and a couple of firefighters. And their sole job at an F1 race is to get somebody out of a car if they can't get out on their own. And that's the only time you're going to roll, in all honesty. You will roll more often for the support races. I mean, if you have Ferrari Challenge there, you're going to be real busy because they love to hit the wall. And the Porsche Cup guys aren't a whole lot more timid when it comes to that kind of stuff. But that's sort of how an F1 crew is organized from the medical track response side. We have separate vehicles there that have firefighters in them, and that's our fire response truck. So we have both a fire response truck with firefighting equipment on it, and then we have another fire response truck that has the extrication equipment, so the hydraulic cutters and all that kind of stuff. And it becomes a very specialized event. So again, you don't go very often. When you do go, it ends up to be something extremely critical. But that's how Formula One organizes themselves. The way we do most of our other events is we call them basically combi trucks. And our trucks are all set up to do medical and fire response as well as extrication. So my typical truck will have a crew chief in it, a jump medic in it. Maybe that jump medic may very well be a doctor, depending on the level of racing we're at. And then a couple firefighters in the back seat. So we run a 4-person crew at those events. And those trucks are set up to have everything on them. So they've got basic medical needs, advanced medical needs, depending on the personnel we have on the truck. And then they also have full firefighting capability and full extrication ability. So we'll have hydraulic cutters, rams, all that kind of stuff. And the neatest thing about doing the short track racing or the local track racing, as I called out here, we're also the tow truck. We're also the lunch delivery truck for endurance race. So we're on the track a lot. And when we run road courses out west here in Alberta, we actually do everything on a live track under local yellow. And our race director is very good. The first time we call in and say, hey, that guy was an idiot, they put their whole course under full course yellow and they lose their entire race because we're talking about a 20-minute race. So the drivers know to behave around us. We park our trucks in such a way that we're safe regardless because we use our truck as a block. So they have to get through a one-ton pickup truck before they get to us anyway. But again, we work safely on a hot track. Most of my guys are quite experienced. We get some new people once in a while, but we take them and we make sure they understand where to stand at a scene and how to protect themselves. We're also a little bit different at our tracks out here where no corner marshals ever enter the track. And if you ever go to an F1 race, you'll see corner marshals all over the track, pushing cars and getting there first to checking the driver and that. And at our tracks out here, if there's not a rescue truck on the track blocking the incident, nobody else enters the track. The corner workers all have fire extinguishers. They're all trained to use them, and they're trained to use them from behind the wall. And but we've got a 3 kilometer track, and we can get to any place in our track in under 1 minute. So we're pretty lucky from that perspective. So that's a little bit about sort of the trucks and the crews that we set up. We're lucky ourselves that we've been able to get sponsorship, which is what some other small trucks don't have. So we've got firefighting equipment on these trucks that's actually meant to be at a oil refinery plant as initial attack. For example, we've got Hamacho cutting tools that are, because of our relationship with Hamacho, we've got some pretty good deals on that kind of stuff. And then medical equipment wise, well, I happen to run the largest EMS system in Alberta next to the government one. So I'm pretty good at getting us medical equipment when we need it. So we're pretty set for now until I retire, then it might be a problem. But equipment wise, that's how our trucks are set up. And we do that sort of for every race event. The other thing, as far as the roles of the people on the trucks, and it doesn't matter if you're at F1 or wherever you're at, the crew chief is in charge of the scene. Depending on the event, that may change. So at F1, they're really into the crew chief or the chief of rescue that's in that rescue one car or the medical chase car. When he shows up to the scene, he'll typically take the scene over. So we'll do a quick handoff from the original crew chief to him to run the scene. At our local track racing, it really depends on the event, and because we are short of personnel, on what the incident is. So if I'm first crew chief in, and because I'm an advanced care paramedic, and I have a critical injury, I'll run the scene for the first minute until the second truck shows up. Then I'm giving command away to my other crew chief because he's primarily a firefighter. And then I'll deal with the patient and the advanced interventions that we might have to do and help the ambulance with that, because our ambulance is also only a basic life support unit. So we're very fluid out here, and we manage the scene based on really our people's expertise. If I happen to have Dr. Seal in my rescue out here, then he's going to go to the patient and deal with the patient while I'm dealing with the other, cutting the carp or whatever we're going to do. So we're very fluid, but the key to that is you can be fluid if everybody understands their roles and understands how you move those roles around. If you sort of start ad-libbing and people don't fully understand what you're doing, the scene can become quite chaotic at that point. So this is all to do with your training of your local crew and everybody understanding how you're going to actually do it. Talk a little bit about our protective equipment that we all wear. Again, we're fortunate we wear, for the most part, driver suits. Most of us wear a two-piece driver suit just because it's easier to take the jacket off at lunchtime. Safety shoes, fire-rated suits, fire gloves, helmets, balaclavas, and then we do have some half-mask respirators with some organic cartridges in them that will give us some protection from electrical battery fires. But it's very critical to understand that if you're dealing with electric cars, those half-mask respirators are only there to help you get the driver out and then you leave. They're not self-contained breathing apparatus. They're not meant to stand in that smoke for any kind of long term to try to fight that fire. They are a rescue mask, basically. Think of it that way. And you get in, you get out. And that's pretty much the extent of what we can do on a true electrical vehicle fire. Because we don't carry enough water to put it out anyway. I mean, you need 3,000 gallons of water minimum to start fighting a electrical car fire if you have one going. So, and we have 100 gallons on our truck, so we're not going to put out a Tesla that catches fire on a racetrack. Let's just put it that way. Big part about safety is being aware of your situation, and this is something we practice a lot. You need to know where you're at in the track. You need to know where your truck's been parked. You need to know your safety egresses. And you need to know how to approach the car. The worst thing you can do is walk up to a race car from the back side where you're in the driver's blind spot, because if he can get it fired, he's leaving. And he doesn't care if you're there. He doesn't know you're there. So we always approach the car in a way that we come around to the front driver's window and get our hand in his windscreen and make sure he sees us before we get close to that car. And then, if you're doing some events, the jump medic will have a little medical kit with them. That's who goes to the driver. And they'll sit on the roof of the car. And that way, at something like a NASCAR race where everyone's on TV, race control now knows the jump medics make contact with the driver. So that's just a visual clue that we do as part of the training to put that jump bag on the roof of the car where the cameras can see it and then race control can see it. A little bit of differences, obviously, on road courses, like I talked about, we do work on hot track under local yellow. On most of your ovals, they're going to go to full course yellow, and the field will be under a pace car coming around. So that's a big difference between oval racing and road racing. And then I don't have a lot of experience on short dirt tracks by any means, but those guys pretty much, as soon as the car flips, they start rolling on the track on quads and they get there. And I think everybody probably hopefully knows to probably stop or slow down. To me, that's a bit scary sometimes, but they're the experts of that field, so I'm not gonna question what they do too much. Before I go on, any questions about any of that kind of stuff? Oh, good.
Since you asked, I'll throw one out for you.
Yep.
So, I'm kind of a tool nut. I always enjoy the tools you guys carry. Where did that all come from? How did you guys decide what tools you needed and which ones you didn't? What's kind of the priority there?
In a race car, the biggest priority, if you're talking the hydraulic tools, is the cutter.
Yeah.
There's not many race cars that you can't take apart with a cutter, because it's all roll cage. And even if you look at a NASCAR, the way the side doors come off, there's actually 3 holes in the side door panel that when you pull the 2 fenders off, you just cut there, and then the whole side door will fall off. So number 1 is a good cutter. Number 2 then would be a spreader. And we have the spreader mainly because we actually do a lot of corporate events that involve street cars. And a little story on that. We had one a couple of years ago at a track. And at those corporate events, we have 2 people in a rescue truck. So we're limited on manpower. And at that event, they didn't even have an ambulance there. So it wasn't overly comfortable. Anyway, we had a car with hit the wall, complete passenger side impact into a wall, knocked about a 2-ton concrete block over 8 feet. So that gives you the idea of the impact that happened there. We pulled up to the car within 30 seconds of impact, and we couldn't see what was going on because all the airbags had deployed at that point. So cut the airbag and had a look inside the car because we could hear snoring respirations. And we found we had actually 2 people in that car, not 1. So we got lucky, sort of. I mean, we knew who was in our infield. This was a private club that has a lot of doctors, physicians, and different things like that. But I happened to get lucky. Dr. Kate was there, and a nurse, a trauma nurse, had just stopped in to visit us for a few minutes on their way back from a relay race they were running in. So my first move was grab the guy's chin, do a modified airway, and call on the radio and say, "Those 2 ladies I was talking to, bring them to me, please." And Kate and the nurse came out. They took over patient care, and Rudy and I were starting to cut that car about 4.5 minutes after impact.
Wow.
And before the first rural fire department showed up, we had most of the car cut, and we had the patients both ready to come out of the car by the time the first ambulance showed up. So it was, from our perspective, it was an excellent response considering the manpower we had. The one gentleman was in a coma for almost 2 months, but he is recovered and functional to the vision that he can look after himself. Sort of, he lives with his sister. He's never going to be the same, but he had a major injury to the lower brainstem from a twisting action with a full face helmet on and no Hans device.
Wow.
So it's something that happens, and people think these big accidents only happen at the big races. But I'll tell you from experience, I have more crashes at a lapping day and more wall impacts with guys that don't have 5-point harnesses on and Hans devices than you're ever going to get on a race weekend. So your chances of injuries at these local pub events are considerably higher than, I mean, I get guys in race cars that hit the wall really hard all the time and they hobble to the car and away they go because the car is meant to do that. They're in it, strapped into it in a way that they can do that. They can roll upside down. They're still in their seatbelt.
Yeah.
But, you get these lapping cars that are in street cars and they hit a wall because some of these cars would be, the front straightaway at Rad Raceway. I've been over 200 kilometers an hour coming down that straightaway into corner one. If you screw up, that's not a big forgiving corner.
Yeah.
So you can hit a wall pretty hard there.
Yeah.
So again, knowing your personality you have, we only have so many people on a racetrack, especially at these local club events. But knowing what we have for help that's close by is really key to making those kinds of instances successful.
Yeah.
And as far as the firefighting stuff is concerned that we carry, I'm going to say it, we carry the best. I mean, our extinguishers will put out almost 3 pounds of powder a second. Every one of our extinguishers are purple K, except for my Class D ones, which are for burning metals. But we got that because of a sponsorship deal. I mean, those extinguishers are $1,200 to $1,500 each. So can a lot of small local tracks buy it? Absolutely not. But there are options they can buy that are much cheaper. They still work extremely well. And I've always focused on firefighting because my biggest fear from being in fire for a very long time is I don't want to watch somebody burn to death. Yeah. So I have enough stuff on my truck that if I can't knock that fire down within 35 seconds to 40 seconds, then there's a big problem. We've got a massive fuel leak somewhere or a bladder exploded or something's happened. And even that, I'm going to knock it down with the systems I have. And that's personal. I've actually watched people in my firefighting days burnt very badly because we couldn't get to them or couldn't get access to them. And I don't want to see that. So we've really invested heavily on the firefighting side and very heavily on the training side of firefighting. For anybody who doesn't know, a fire extinguisher, when it's rated for the lay person to use, that fire extinguisher under the hands of a professional has to be able to put out 10 times more fire than what the average lay person can put out. So when you talk about using a fire extinguisher, it's great that you got it, but you got to practice and understand how to use it. Because, I mean, when I went down to Ansel to their fire school, we're putting out simulated props, but the size of an airport fuel tanker truck with 2 fire extinguishers. So if you know how to use the equipment, you're going to become extremely successful at it. And then as far as the medical stuff is concerned, David, I have my ALS kit on there. I don't carry all my drugs with me just because we don't use them enough. But we're lucky in Alberta where we're actually licensed to practice medicine. So I don't need to work under a doctor, under a base hospital or anything like that. I can work to my full scope of practice as long as I have a system of medical control and audit. So we're really lucky out here where I can actually do more when I'm working not for the government than when I'm working on my own, because under the government I have to follow a set of protocols. Still very liberal. I mean, trust me, we do pre-hospital thrombolytics and everything else here. But when I'm on my own, I can work to the extent of my practice. And my practice scope says you can give any medication by these 4 different routes that you're comfortable in giving. There's actually no restriction on type of medication I can give as long as I'm comfortable in doing it. Same as airway management, Crikes, we have glide scopes, we have all that kind of fancy stuff. So we're very lucky out here to have the type of system we have that allows us to work to our full ability.
No, Paul, that's great. Thank you. I see Aiden has raised his hand. I'm going to let him ask his question.
Absolutely.
Hi, Paul. I just had a quick question. I'm a medical student at Michigan State. And you just mentioned when you are approaching a car and you're looking to clear the driver's airway, kind of what differences do you see in terms of your extraction protocol from anywhere from the F1 level down to the grassroots and dirt tracks level? In terms of helmet, do you remove the helmet, keep it on? Sometimes you say they have a Hans device, sometimes they don't. What are some obstacles with that?
We pretty much always take the helmet off if we can. If we cannot get the helmet off and we have an airway issue, we cut the helmet. And it takes us less than a minute to cut the front of the helmet off. So if you're good, you can actually have the helmet cut it and an airway in under 2 minutes if you practice it. For us, the helmet always comes off, and that means undoing the Hans clips first before you lift that helmet off. If we can't get, and typically the helmet, it's hard to get off in a caged car, if you know what I mean by that, like your NASCARs, right? So in a NASCAR, we might have to, pop the Lexan window out in the front and do the airway laying on the hood of the car by cutting the front of the chin of the helmet off. If he's stuck in there, we can't get him out. We also practice a different maneuver called a Rotex maneuver. And that's more for any time you have a car that has a door that will open. So a lot of your rally cars and those kinds of series, we can do what's called a rapid extrication. And when we're testing for the FIA, our target's 25 seconds from approach to the car to having the driver out. So it's all about practice and understanding the technique. But there's ways to get to the airway. But for us, helmet off, and if the helmet can't get off, then we take and cut the helmet, and that can be done real simple with a basic Dremel tool, a cast cutting saw because it vibrates and it's safe, or we actually have a set of hydraulic cutters that we can do it with. So we have 3 different options for cutting the front of a helmet off. And if you practice it a few times, and we got lucky a couple of years ago at ICMS, where a couple of the major helmet manufacturers, I think it was Bell and Simpsons, donated about 30 helmets for us to cut up. They're all brand new helmets. And we got everybody who took the racetrack safety program that year got to cut some helmets and have some fun. So something you don't get to do very often because most people don't really want you to cut their helmet. But there are avenues where we can get equipment to be able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks,
Great.
Paul. Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
I think the other thing I really want to focus on is what we do every day when we go to the track. So we do an annual training every year. Depending on how many new people we have, we might run a SFI certified road rescue course or the SFI certified jump medic course. But if we don't have enough people to run the formal course, we still get together for a couple of days at the start of each season. And we pretty much do the course just without the certification process. So we spend a tremendous amount of time helmet Hans removal and driver extraction out of different types of race seats. And then we always do some live fire training with pan fires. And pan fires are easy to put out, but you can make them really fun to put out by making it 3-dimensional. So now all of a sudden you have to maybe come down through the center of a prop that's burning or work your way around an elbow pipe to hold the fire past it while you're trying to close it off. And there's lots of things you can do with pan fire training to get you really good with a fire extinguisher. And then we spend a while doing car rollover. We've developed some techniques where we can get a car back on its wheels with 2 pickup trucks in under 2 minutes. And if anybody's ever tried to take a driver out of a car upside down, it's going to take you at least a half an hour. And you're being lucky if you get to do it that quick. If I can take 2 minutes and roll the car back on its wheel, we all know that if the guy's flipped the car already and he's in a racing seat, if he's not already paralyzed, we're not going to do any more damage bringing that car back on its wheels. During some of our studies that we've done, our testing with different mannequins that we have access to, the two times you move somebody's spine is applying the collar and lying them flat on a spine board. That's the two times when you move a spine, potentially up to 10 degrees. Um, Other than that, you can actually roll the car back over with the driver in it, especially if he's in a full racing seat with minimal movement, and then you're less than 2 minutes to take the roof off and get him out. So again, different things you can practice and do. Bring the car over. They do it a lot fancier in NASCAR. They have a twin boom wrecker, 2 inches on it, and they use a special strapping system, and they lift the car and flip it in the air and put it back down. At local track races, we don't have all those options, so we've developed different ways to bring the car back onto its wheel very quickly and very under control. It's when you sit down, it's sitting down like you took a step off your bottom step and down to the ground. Like we can control it very well, and then it makes our extrication of the driver a lot quicker. Ice racing, they're all slow motion rollovers. We'll get a couple rollovers every weekend at ice racing. We leave it up to the driver. If they want to get out, we'll help them out when they're upside down. If they want to hang tight for a minute. It's actually harder to flip the car back over on its wheels on an ice track because it just slides when you go to pull it. So it's just a bit more complicated. And if they get out of it, then we just back up to the nearest snowbank and drag it over when we hit the snowbank. So it's pretty simple from that perspective. But that's what we do for our annual training. Every day when we go to the track, we have to take this seriously. And even though we can all get into some very bad habits because we do it so many times, there's still certain things you need to do every morning. And a big thing you need to do every morning is talk with your crew, understand everybody's roles, make sure everybody understands your expectations of them, and do your truck check. I mean, if I don't do my truck check this weekend, next week the guy's going to think, oh, they probably started the pump last week. I don't have to bother starting it. And then all of a sudden you get to a situation where you need the pump and it hasn't been started in a month. So start your pump, run your hydraulic tools, go through your medical bag, make sure you have all your tow straps, all your lifting straps, all that, and have a check sheet that you can fill out and sign off on. And that also protects you from a liability perspective, because then if something goes wrong, you can say, no, we actually did start that pump in the morning. You know, something broke, pull cord broke, whatever happened, but you can show you've done your due diligence to ensure that equipment was all working at the start of the race day. And that's a good time to also, if you have new people, to make sure they understand how the equipment works. And we'll get new people out there, and Devin never used the powder keg system on my truck, which is it's a combi system for firefighting. So what it is 75 gallons of foam with 75 pounds of purple K, and we can apply both products at the same time. Purple K or powder puts out a fire by chemical reaction. It's the fastest way to put out a fire. It doesn't matter what anybody says. The problem is it doesn't take away heat. So if you have a car that's been burning for a while, you will get reignition if you only use powder. So by using a combination of powder and foam at the same time, we knock the fire out very quickly, and then the foam's taking away the heat, so we limit the reignition issues that you have to be concerned with, basically. And I just thought somebody typed in chat some about the questions, but I...
Yep. So Uwer sent a question, and he simply said, I'd like to ask a question. How would planning an off-road event as a rescuer perspective differ from planning a circuit event? Do you require extra personnel or qualifications from rescue crew? Across the continent, rally events are the more dominant discipline, so I'm curious about that. So going at a circuit versus, say, off-road rally.
Huge difference. And we actually had a great talk at ICMS last year about this based on Sweden Rally. You're not close to an incident. A rally race they have spotters sometimes, or they actually have, at the bigger rally races, the co-pilot and pilot are both actually trained in extrication and medical. And they have a system in place where if you can help yourself, you do that first. The next car by has to stop to give assistance. And if you need assistance, then the next car by will drive to the next checkpoint and then launch the emergency services. So in some of these long stages, you could be 20 minutes, half an hour before your first appropriate professional rescue people show up. So rally racing is a whole different world, especially the ones that have those longer stages, because there's not a spotter everywhere. And yes, they can follow the cars with tracking devices. And then they have safety things built in that, at the checkpoint, someone hasn't come in, so now we're going to go looking for them and stuff like that. But it's a huge difference. I take my hat off to those guys that do those major rally races, because now you might have to get down a cliff somewhere to get to the car. You might have helicopter rescue involved. There's so much more involved in those rally races that we don't think about on a daily basis at a road course, because there's somebody on every corner who says someone hit the wall, and within 30 to 45 seconds you're on scene with them. Rally's a whole different world.
Thank you, Paul. So, Paul, we do have about maybe 15 minutes left. And I'm not saying I have to rush you out, but I'm also saying just, encourage any opportunities for people to ask questions as we're wrapping up here.
Oh, so I think all I had left to wrap up is just two more things. So the other thing we do at club racing, we walk the pits every morning. When you go to a NASCAR race or a Porsche Cup car or whatever, every car is exactly the same. I know where the shutoff switch is. I don't have to look at all 30 or 40 cars. When I do club racing, they all have a shutoff switch, but they aren't all in the same place. They all have a fire system, but they aren't in the same place. So we actually take 10 or 15 minutes every morning. We go up and visit a different crew and say, hey, can we just take a look at your car with rescue? I've never had a crew say no. They love it when we actually come by. And we look at every car and learn about the different cars. We also run a lot of different series. So that's what we do in the morning. And then at the end of the day, it's as critical important to do a debrief and a check at the end of the day. Make sure all your equipment's back on your truck. Make sure, your fuel's all filled up on your pumps. Any medical equipment's been replaced that you've used. And do a debrief. How did the day go? Did somebody feel uncomfortable with anything throughout the day? What can we explain to do it differently? And just have a really good debrief at the end of the day. And that's kind of our typical day at a racetrack goes.
Nice.
And the biggest important thing, have fun. Because if you don't have fun, we don't make enough money to make it worthwhile.
Amen to that. So, Paul, I'm going to be selfish and ask you a question now, because you, talked about club racing, and I know Dr. Reed and I kind of bounce around between HPDE and club racing, and there's been several times I've rolled up to the racetrack, been ready to go, and is there anything I should go to the rescue team and tell them, introduce myself, show stuff? What would you like from us when we show up to these events?
To know you're there and what you are, and what your expectations are of us, and then we'll be more than happy, because I'm not shy, to say what my expectations is of you. And in all honesty, I love having doctors at racetracks. I love having really well-trained people, but sometimes they don't understand how to work on a racetrack. And I don't say this to be any way ignorant or mean or anything else, but when you're on a scene of a racetrack and stuff's going on, it doesn't matter who you are, you need to listen to the crew chief. He is there for one job. He's there to watch to make sure everybody stays safe. Yep. And if you put yourself in a position where you can get hurt, or he sees a car coming that's maybe not behaving and he says, move, don't go, but why? Yeah. Ask me but why later. And I'll be quite happy to explain what I saw and why I did it. But he's really the guy who's responsible to take everybody home safe at the end of the night. And sometimes when there's something really bad about to happen, we may not be diplomatic in how we ask you to move. And that's not personal. That's just because we see in about the next 6 seconds someone's about to slam into the back of the truck, which is probably going to come into the back of the car, and you're not standing in a good spot. So just work with that. But really, I do it every day too. We have ambulances at our club races, for example, and I go up and introduce myself to the people in it. I try to find out what their qualifications are. Some won't tell me, which makes me really nervous. But we make sure and also our race controls are really good. We go out on the track as rescue during a hot track. If an ambulance is required, they red flag the event. And the ambulance, because they're not on the track every weekend, I get a different person every weekend in the ambulance. So we have a policy that the ambulance doesn't come on the track until all traffic has stopped. And that's just a safety issue. They're also not in fire suits. They're not in anything like that. So how we handle those events is we basically deal with the driver to get them out of the car, and then we turn them over to them. And of course, if it's serious, we always work in conjunction with them, but we're kind of in charge when the guy's in the car, and they're in charge when the guy gets out of the car, basically, is how we manage it.
Great. Thank you.
Definitely, we like to know what we have on the track, because like I said earlier, if something goes sideways and I'm there with just one other person, it's really nice to know I got these other supports in the background. And that's the same if you're in a medical chase car or a medical car of some type. It's awesome to know what we got coming to help us, especially when it's an event you don't work together a lot of.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Reed, I saw you threw a question there. Would you like to ask that of Paul?
Sure. Paul, first of all, thanks for this presentation. It's really terrific. I want to go back to something you touched on briefly a little while ago, which was smoke from a battery fire. And I wonder if you could expound on that a little bit, maybe talk in a little more detail about what the risks are for that and how your crew manages that risk.
So the smoke from a battery fire, I'm not the expert on this, but it's got about 13 different gases that can produce, of which any one can kill you, which is like cyanide and things like that. So if we have an electrical battery fire, we will don our half-mast respirator, which has got I can't remember the number on it, but it's an organic cartridge that will filter that out. But it's meant to be basically, think of it as an escape pack almost. Like it's going to get you in there and out, and that's it. The bigger risk with the fire is the smoke, but the temperature. And if anybody remembers 2 years ago at ICMS, when Pete did that thing on the PPE and the burn rating of it with the battery fires. I mean, these suits that are meant to last 10 to 20 seconds, you're getting burned through in about a second and a half. Those battery fires are burning at extremely high temperatures. And the other downside to a battery fire is it almost burns like a jet. Like if I'm in a fuel fire, it's a big fireball. It's not a pinpoint fire that I'm stepping into. And people who aren't comfortable around fire might think I'm crazy saying that. But that battery fire, they wanted to put those in the rush race cars out here for their starters because it would save 2 pounds. And we said, well, the problem with you putting that battery in that car is it's located right next to where we have to stand to get you out. And I cannot physically stand there if that battery is on fire. So our WCMA organization, our licensing body, said, no, those batteries are not going there in those cars because it's too much of a risk to rescuer and driver if they catch on fire because it's right next to the cockpit where the driver's sitting. So the gases are huge. All we can do is a half-mast respirator, and every time somebody brings those types of cars to the track, especially if it's a corporate event, it's made very clear by the organizer, if your car catches on fire, it will burn to the ground. The rescue crew is not there to try to put that fire out once it gets going. And we don't have time today, but to understand how these battery fires work is huge because it's all 1 battery to 2 batteries to 4 batteries to 8 batteries to so on down the road. And when we're putting water on those fires, we're not actually putting the fire out. We're trying to cool it enough to stop the spread of that fire to more battery cells is what we're trying to do, basically.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful, Paul. It seems like at ICMS in December, there were some conversations about the fact that the smoke contains it has corrosive properties. And so even if you don't inhale it, if you just get it on your skin, it can hurt your skin. You can get chemical burns from it. And so handling drivers, helping them out of the cars, and then both you and the drivers, safety crew and the drivers have got this dust all over them that they have to watch out for as they're trying to decontaminate themselves. I understand. It sounds really, really risky.
And that's a big issue. I mean, technically, we should actually have a decon system set up, which would be a big rubber tank we would stand in, and then someone would hose us down with water and flush us, and that water would now be all contained and disposed of in a proper way, and so on and so on and so on. So, um, I'm not against electric cars, but I sure hope they don't come to the racetracks in full force because it's going to create a whole other problem for us. And if you look at when Montoya hit that jet car and the way they burnt the track and ruined the pavement, that's nothing compared to electric car fire on that same track. Like that track would have been destroyed if it had sat there burning that long on that hill.
Dr. Ferguson, I'd like to share a little bit more on that. So when we did the ICMS did a lithium ion battery cell test with a facility called the Battery Innovation Center. We actually had 3 single cells, not a Tesla battery. And I would say, folks, that the temperatures we saw from the lithium ion battery cell, one cell, we were reaching in excess of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you look at a race gas or methanol fire that you'll see typically at a racetrack or perhaps this weekend at Sebring, if there's a fire, you're talking 12 to 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. We were talking temperatures in excess of 3,000 degrees. There's no protective safety fire suit or anything out there to protect you. And David, real quick, the other thing, I was fortunate enough to attend the NASCAR Safety Summit in January in Daytona. NASCAR has a new partner that's supposed to be the greatest product to put on battery fires, and they had a lithium-ion marine battery that they got to start sparking off, and this company came in and started spraying their product all over it. Here's the amazing thing. The dummies weren't smart enough to tell all the attendees, there's about 125 of us there, that we need to don't be downwind from this. And Dr. Rob Seal and I are like, why are those people standing there? Within 7 seconds, the people that inhaled that shit started coughing horribly. And so we're like, you might want to have those people move. And here's the dangerous thing for at a racetrack if we have that, as Paul touched on. Within, it was Daytona in January. Within 2 minutes, the wind changed the complete opposite direction. And so everybody had to go running the other side. And so again, think about if we have a grandstand right there with 10,000 people in it. And we have that wind constantly changing. There's no way the track promoter can keep his fans safe from the fumes. Back to the fumes, Mike. It's just the carcinogens and stuff that's in that is so bad for our lungs. So again, we saw that in January Daytona, where the wind can be such a nasty thing when we're fighting one of those fires as well.
No, Tom, thank you for that. And that actually does bring us to time. But with all of these great talks, we always get more questions and answers sometimes, and we always want to have further conversations. And I think, you're right, talking about how to handle this. This is going to be the job for all of our people right here. Because I'm getting too old to do all this stuff anymore, and they're going to have to go figure this stuff out in the future. And I'll sit back and be in the grandstand and have the cold beer and watch the show. So with that, I'm going to say, Paul, thanks so much for coming on and being our speaker, for being our first speaker of season 3. That's always a hard ask to ask someone. So I appreciate your generosity with your time and your diligence to come talk to us, answer questions. I hope you'll come back and attend a couple more of these and listen to what other speakers have to say. I will say we have some great students and trainees on here, and I got a couple of messages from some of them that said they might reach out to you later on with a couple further questions. I think you sparked some interest. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Anytime you share my email with them or my phone number to text me. And there's one guy from Michigan on here.
Yep. Aiden right there.
I'm going to Kalamazoo, Michigan in September. Is there anything to do there? Because I'm not hearing very many good things about it.
Aiden, do you want to answer that question? Or you want me to?
You can go ahead. The only thing I know in Kalamazoo, Michigan, there is a cool there's a cool plane museum, aviation museum down there.
Well, it might make it work well then.
So I didn't even know that. I was going to say I would take a hard left and go to Grand Rapids, but yeah, I would check out the plane
Come
museum.
on, Kalamazoo's got the university, and they got the Kalamazoo Wings minor league hockey team. They got a good hockey program
There you go. There you go. That will work for
The
you.
only time I stop in Kalamazoo is on my way to Chicago.
That's to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm only going to Kalamazoo because I spent about $8 million with Stryker this year, and they're taking me down there to their factory for some kind of feedback thing about what we think of their products. So that's the only reason I'm going, because they're paying for it.
Well, check out the aviation museum according to Aiden, and if it's not very good, we'll blame Aiden for it. I blame Aiden for a lot of things, so that's okay.
Thanks, guys.
Well, with that, I will say thank you very much, Paul. It was great seeing all of you. We will have another one in a month. I'll let you know what that looks like in email. And with that, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Doc.
Have a good day.